All right, let's dive into something pretty major, huh? The future of the U.S. dollar. We've got some interesting articles, lots of buzz about former President Trump, his reaction to the BRICS nations, and their potential move away from the dollar. He's even talking tariffs, and we all know how much he loves those.
Yeah, it's really fascinating to see how this is all going to play out. I don't think it's just political posturing. I think we're really seeing a potential, power shift on a global economic stage.
Yeah.
BRICS is making a play here, and the U.S. with a possible Trump return, they seem ready to push back and push back hard.
Okay, so let's unpack this a little bit. First things first, what exactly is BRICS? I know it's an acronym, but could you remind me what it stands for and why this group matters so much?
Sure. BRICS stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. It's a group of, major emerging economies, and they have significant global influence. And get this, they've actually expanded recently. They've welcomed Egypt, Iran, and the UAE, and even more countries are kind of knocking at the door.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a sign that more and more nations are looking for alternatives to the current world order and to the U.S. dollar's dominance.
Yeah, it's like they're building a whole new club, and the guest list is getting pretty exclusive, but why are they so focused on challenging the dollar? What's the motivation behind this de-dollarization that everybody's talking about?
Well, Putin has been pretty vocal about it. He's accusing the U.S. of weaponizing the dollar and forcing other nations to seek alternatives. And he has a point, right? We've seen how the U.S. can use their control over the global financial system to impose sanctions to exert pressure. De-dollarization is, it's essentially BRICS trying to create their own financial systems and trade more in their own currencies to reduce their reliance on the U.S.
It's like they're trying to build a separate financial universe where the U.S. dollar doesn't hold all the power. That's a bold move. But how would that even work in practice? What are the mechanics of de-dollarization?
It's a complex process.
Yeah.
But think of it this way. Right now, if Brazil wants to buy oil from Russia, they likely have to use U.S. dollars for the transaction. De-dollarization means they would bypass the dollar. They could potentially use a system where Brazilian real is directly exchanged for Russian rubles. Now this could involve setting up new financial institutions, creating alternative payment systems to SWIFT, and maybe even establishing their own version of the IMF.
Hold on, you're mentioning SWIFT and the IMF. For those of us who don't have economics degrees, could you break those down?
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
SWIFT is, it's basically the messaging system that banks around the world use to transfer money. And the IMF, or the International Monetary Fund, it acts as a kind of a global lender, often stepping in to help countries facing financial crises. Both institutions, they're heavily influenced by the U.S., which gives them a lot of leverage in the global financial system. BRICS, they want to create alternatives that are outside U.S. control.
I see. So it's about shifting the balance of power. And it seems like Trump's picking up on this shift, judging by his reaction. He didn't exactly mince words when he threatened those tariffs, did he?
Not at all. His Truth Social post was very direct, threatening 100% tariffs on BRICS imports if they attempt to create a new currency or back another one to replace the dollar. And he even warned them, say goodbye to selling into the wonderful U.S. economy.
Wow. That's some strong language. Sounds like he's really trying to, scare them off. But he also said there's no chance BRICS will succeed in replacing the dollar. Does he really believe that? Or is it just bluster?
Hard to say. Trump's history with tariffs is well documented. He's used them as a negotiating tactic before, especially during his trade wars with Mexico, Canada, and China. But this situation feels different. This isn't just about trade deals. This is about challenging the very foundation of U.S. economic power.
So it's like a high-stakes poker game, and Trump just threw down a massive bluff. But the question is, will BRICS fold, or will they call his bluff?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the answer might depend on individual countries within BRICS and their specific goals. Let's take India, for example.
Right, India. You mentioned earlier they're officially against de-dollarization. Their foreign minister, S. Jaishankar, made that pretty clear. But if they're part of BRICS, why are they hesitant to jump on this bandwagon?
Well, they have voiced opposition to de-dollarization, but it's not quite black and white. India has a complex relationship with both the U.S. and the other BRICS nations. They're open to exploring workarounds to the dollar when it makes sense for them, particularly if they face trade policy issues or need to find alternative solutions with specific trading partners. They're trying to walk a tightrope. trying to maintain good relations with everyone.
It sounds like they're playing it safe, hedging their bets. But how long can they stay on that tightrope? Especially with someone like Trump in the mix. His past comments about India being the biggest charger of tariffs, even while praising their approach, it suggests that he might not hesitate to put pressure on them.
That's a key point. India's position within BRICS and its relationship with the U.S. It'll be fascinating to watch as this all plays out. They could be a deciding factor in how this whole de-dollarization movement unfolds.
This is getting really interesting. We've got BRICS trying to build their own financial system, Trump threatening tariffs, and India trying to play both sides. Where do we even go from here? Can BRICS actually pull this off?
To answer that, I think we need to look at some expert opinions and delve a bit deeper into the potential scenarios for the dollar's future. But first, let's take a closer look at what a multipolar currency world might actually look like and what the implications could be, both positive and negative. So we've established that BRICS is making a move, but what would a world with multiple major currencies, what would that actually look like? Would it be a good thing? Would it throw the global economy into chaos?
Yeah, honestly, it's kind of mind-boggling to even imagine. I mean, the dollar's been the dominant force for so long. Are there any, real benefits to having a more diverse currency landscape?
Well, think of it this way. If all your savings were in one bank, right, and that bank collapsed, you'd lose everything. But if you diversify your savings across, let's say, multiple banks, you spread the risk, right?
Right.
Same logic can apply to global currencies.
So a multipolar system, it could actually bring more stability. That's it's kind of counterintuitive, isn't it? I would have thought more currencies would just make things more complex, more volatile.
Well, it's not that simple. While more currencies could lead to, some short-term fluctuations as businesses adjust and exchange rates find their footing, the long-term potential for stability, it's real. You see, that dollar's dominance means that any problems in the U.S. economy, like inflation, recession, those things can send, shockwaves through the entire global financial system. A multipolar system would dilute that risk, making the global economy less susceptible to shocks, for any single country.
Okay. I see the logic there. It's like a safety net for the global economy. But let's be realistic. There would be challenges too, right?
Absolutely. For starters, increased currency volatility in the short term, that would make planning investment decisions more difficult for businesses. And then there's the big question of which currencies would actually rise to prominence alongside the dollar. Would it be the euro, the yuan, maybe a basket of BRICS currencies? This would depend on factors like economic strength, political stability, international trust.
It's a lot to wrap your head around. And how would this shift affect global trade and investment flows? I imagine things could get pretty complicated if every transaction involves juggling multiple currencies.
Exactly. It would require new infrastructure, new regulations, and a whole lot of coordination between countries. And it wouldn't just be about economics, right? The dollar's dominance has given the U.S. Immense geopolitical leverage. A shift away from the dollar could diminish U.S. influence on the world stage, which is likely why we're seeing such a strong reaction from figures like Trump.
He seems to view this as a direct threat to American power, both economically and politically. But are his fears justified? Is a multipolar currency world, is it inevitable? Or can the U.S. maintain the dollar's dominance?
That's where things get really interesting. The Atlantic Council, it's a well-respected think tank. They have a model that suggests the dollar's dominance is, it's secure in the near and medium term. Their research is based on extensive data analysis and considers factors like trade patterns, financial market depth, and the role of reserve currencies.
So according to their model, the dollar isn't going anywhere anytime soon. But what are their assumptions? Are they factoring in the potential for BRICS to disrupt the current system?
That's a valid point. While the model is robust, it's important to remember that models are only as good as their inputs. The Atlantic Council's model may not fully account for the potential for BRICS to create, viable alternatives to existing institutions like SWIFT and the IMF. If BRICS can create a parallel financial system that gains traction, the dollar's dominance could erode much faster than anticipated.
So while the dollar might be safe for now, it's facing a serious challenge. And the outcome is far from certain. It's almost like watching a slow-motion earthquake. You know something big is happening, but you're not sure how much damage it will cause, or when the real tremors will hit.
That's a good analogy. And as we watch this all unfold, I think it's crucial to keep a close eye on key players like India. We know they're officially against de-dollarization, but their actions may speak louder than words, right?
You're right. Their position is so intriguing, they seem to want to have their cake and eat it too. Maintaining strong ties with both the US and BRICS. But how long can they play that game?
Their stance is, it's certainly pragmatic. Given their unique position and interests, they have a massive economy with growing global influence, and they're trying to navigate a very complex geopolitical landscape.
But at some point, they'll have to make a choice, won't they? As BRICS gains momentum, will India align more closely with the US or with this emerging bloc? Their decision could have major consequences for the future of the global economy.
It's a decision with profound implications, not just for India, but for the entire world.
This brings us back to you, our listener. What does this potential shift in global financial power, what does it mean for you personally? It's easy to get lost in the abstract talk of currencies and economies, but this stuff has real world impacts on all of us.
You're absolutely right. This isn't just an academic debate. This is about the future of our interconnected world. A weakening dollar could lead to higher prices for imported goods, from the clothes you wear to the electronics you use. It could also affect your investments if U.S. assets become less attractive to foreign investors.
It's like a chain reaction. What starts as a change in currency valuations can ripple through the entire global economy, ultimately impacting your wallet and your daily life. And we're not even talking about the potential geopolitical implications. A world with multiple centers of economic power could lead to new alliances, new conflicts, and a complete reshuffling of the global order.
It's a lot to process,
Yeah.
and we're only scratching the surface here. But the key takeaway, I think, is that the world is changing, and the rules of the game are being rewritten.
So while we don't have all the answers, we can certainly equip ourselves with the knowledge and insights needed to navigate these uncertain times.
And perhaps more importantly, to engage in the conversation and help shape the future we want to see.
So we've explored the potential upsides and downsides of a world with multiple major currencies, and it's clear that the US dollar's dominance, it's facing a real challenge.
Yeah. It's a fascinating dynamic to witness. The global economy is in a state of flux, and it's tough to predict with any certainty what the future holds.
We've talked a lot about BRICS' motivations and their plans to create alternative financial systems, but can they actually pull this off? What would it take for them to really challenge, the dollar's dominance?
Well, for BRICS to succeed, they need more than just rhetoric.
Yeah.
Right? They need to build credible alternatives to existing institutions like SWIFT and the IMF. They need to establish payment systems that are efficient, secure, and widely accepted. And perhaps most importantly, they need to foster trust among their members and in the global marketplace.
They're essentially trying to build a whole new financial ecosystem from the ground up. That's a tall order. But let's say, for argument's sake, they managed to make significant progress. What would be the signs that the dollar's dominance is truly waning?
Well, one key indicator would be a shift in central bank reserves. Right now, central banks around the world, they hold a significant portion of their reserves in U.S. dollars.
Yeah.
If we start to see a noticeable decline in the dollar share of global reserves, that would be a strong signal that its dominance is slipping.
So central banks switching to other currencies, that would be a clear warning sign for the dollar. What about everyday transactions? Would we see changes there as well?
Absolutely. Increased use of BRICS currencies in international trade would be another significant indicator. If businesses start routinely using yuan, rubles, or a basket of BRICS currencies for cross-border transactions, that would suggest a real shift away from the dollar.
And how would this impact the average person? Would we suddenly need to start carrying multiple currencies in our wallets?
It's unlikely to be that dramatic in the near term. However, a decline in the dollar's value would likely lead to higher prices for imported goods, and it could also affect industrial portfolios, making U.S. assets less attractive to foreign investors.
It seems like there's a lot to watch for in the coming months and years. But what about the U.S. response? Can they just sit back and watches the dollar's dominance erodes, or will they fight back?
Well, the U.S. government will almost certainly take steps to defend the dollar's status. They might try to strengthen existing alliances, promote the use of the dollar in emerging markets, and potentially even pressure other countries to avoid using alternative currencies.
It sounds like we're headed for a potential currency war with countries vying for economic and geopolitical influence through their respective currencies.
It's certainly a possibility. And as we've discussed, this isn't just about money. It's about power. The currency that dominates global trade and finance, it holds immense sway over the global economy and in international relations.
So as this all plays out, what's the main takeaway for our listeners today? What should they be paying attention to as this complex story unfolds?
I'd say keep a close eye on the actions of central banks, particularly their reserve holdings. Watch for any significant shifts in global trade patterns and the currencies being used, for international transactions, and pay attention to how the U.S. government responds to this challenge, both in terms of economic policy and foreign policy.
And don't forget about India's role in all of this. Their decision to align more closely with the U.S. or with BRICS could have a ripple effect throughout the global economy.
Yeah, it's a dynamic situation with the potential to reshape the global financial landscape as we know it. By staying informed and engaging in these conversations, we can better understand the forces at play and make informed decisions about the future.
That's a great point. Knowledge is power, especially in a world that's changing as rapidly as ours. And while the future might seem uncertain, it's also full of possibilities.
And who knows, maybe this shift away from a single dominant currency could ultimately lead to a more balanced and equitable global financial system.
It's definitely a possibility worth exploring. So to our listeners, we encourage you to continue following this story, to ask questions, to challenge assumptions, and to consider the potential implications for your own life and for the world around you.
Remember, the future is not something that just happens to us. It's something we create together.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the future of the U.S. dollar. We'll be back soon with another exploration into a fascinating and thought-provoking topic. Until then, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.